We're so excited today to be joined by Magdalena Bay, who have a new album out, Mercurial World, and it is their debut album. And Magdalena Bay is Mika and Matthew. Thanks for joining us. Really, really appreciate your time today.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
I do want to point everybody to your website, mercurialworld.com. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but it's just a fabulous thing. And I think that everybody, the first thing about Magdalena Bay, everybody wants to know is like, how did you come up with this name? And so it all goes back, Matt, to your job in a previous part of your life in IT.
Correct. I was working at my IT job a few years ago now, and I get emails from a Maggie Bay, and I just loved the name so much. And it turns out it's also a place in Baja, California in Mexico. And I don't know, we still haven't been there, but we actually met someone randomly. We're on like an airport shuttle getting back from our last gig.
Yeah, our drummer loves making like small talk with people, so he starts telling them about our band, and we're like, Nick.
He's like, well, he says, yeah, what's your band name? We're like, Magdalena Bay. He's like, oh yeah, I was just there.
Like, he's telling us about it. It sounds pretty cool. So I think we'll have to make a pilgrimage at some point, do the whale watching and all that.
Mm-hmm. Good fishing and nice beaches, apparently.
My understanding is that you never actually met Maggie Bay.
That's correct. Yeah. I would just receive emails.
and you have no indication whether or not she knows that she's inspired this.
That's also correct. Yeah, I tried to look her up online and I couldn't find her, but I don't know.
Wow, she was just sent by the universe to inspire you.
Maybe it's one of those things where, they know that the person who's sending this email is going to be delivering bad news. They just make up a fake name.
Maybe.
Just a thought anyway. But you all are so, is it fair to refer to you all as type A's, workaholics?
Not me. I'm definitely.
I think Matt's definitely, I'm type A, like all around. Matt's very chill and patient. But you're also like real, like he loves to work also.
I'd say I definitely have a work ethic. I wouldn't say I'm like type A in terms of being
no, but you're very detail oriented though, which goes a long way in this line of work. So.
Well, you had been putting out, singles and EPs. And of course, it's like when you're doing that and you're a young act, it's like just you're throwing this out into the ether. And sometimes you got to feel like to what effect. And you all just decided to double down and you just started making more and making more and making more to the point where you're making 1 minute, music videos and things like that. And finally, with all of this bulk of work going out there, that's when you started to get some traction.
I think it was a good exercise for us to just develop our artistry, because, like, I guess it's like practice makes perfect in a sense where we were just sort of figuring out what Magdalena Bay was and like what, how to develop our craft and stuff. And so I think just like, we weren't scared to put anything out there, even if it was like maybe a little half baked or whatever. I think that was like part of the fun.
Yeah, especially with the mini mix is and why we came up with it. Mm-hmm. And that was huge for us to like try new things sonically and visually too. Yeah. So yeah.
So after you started to get some traction, then the pandemic comes along and you have traction and you have time, so you actually got the time to work on a full length album and Mercurial World is the outcome of that. How did you feel about that stretch of time, like out in front of you like that?
It was a little frightening, but also, I guess in hindsight, really good thing, because the future was so uncertain. We were about to go on tour and it all got canceled, last minute. And so we were kind of like stuck at home and like, I guess just trying to make the best of our seemingly unending amounts of free time.
Yeah, like I think we really needed that focus and time and care, and like we really like immersed ourselves in the music and the ideas we had for the album, and it was like really huge for us. So yeah.
So you actually sort of had this thought in your head that you'd like to have a theme but the
Mhm.
theme actually just sort of presented itself through the songs as you wrote them.
Yeah. I mean, we made a bunch of the songs, and then at some point we're like, okay, what are these about? Like, let me write out all the lyrics. We were like on a road trip with my parents, and we just kind of started reading them and like writing some like thoughts down of what they were talking about, like across the board, and the story kind of like materialized in that way.
Is Hysterical Us sort of the one that maybe you'd point to as the thematic center?
Yeah, I feel like there's a couple different themes within the album, and Hysterical Us definitely like encapsulates probably one of them, you know. Yeah, I think so, for sure.
You know, we were talking about this earlier. You're speaking to us from your apartment, which also is your studio, which is also your video production center. And, you know, you are like DIY royalty. You do everything, right? And so as you have now signed on with a label, did you have access to some extra, you know, help along the way, you know, that was a little bit less DIY?
Especially in the video production aspects of things, we were able to like work with amazing, talented directors and film crews and stuff that we never really had access to before.
Yeah.
So.
And even like a little bit of budget went such a long way. Like when we had the idea to like send brochures out to everyone whose address we had on file, like, you know, that's not like the most expensive marketing thing to do, but it like went a really long way just to like send something physical out to people that they could have in their hands, like this little
and set the mood of the whole, you know, record campaign. I think.
Yeah, I was curious because there's such a high production level in the music, and to think that you're doing virtually or mostly all of it out of your apartment, kind of nuts.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's the future. You know, there's just
and the present.
Yeah, well, that's, I guess, the case. There's just so much technology that's easily affordable, and, you know, all you really need is a computer, and then you can make, you know, whatever I guess you could think of to an extent.
We really didn't have and still don't have that much gear, so it's possible to do just about anything.
You know, the present versus the future, that's kind of one of the themes of the album, isn't it?
Yes, it is.
Time has no meaning when you're talking to Magdalena Bay. Our guests today on the bridge are Magdalena Bay, Mika, and Matthew, and the new album out, Mercurial World. I wanted to just, if you'll bear with me, do a little bit of your origin story, because I do kind of love it. It was around 2011, and Mika, you were doing what every 15-year-old girl always wants to do. You were covering Crazy Train in your first live performance.
Horrible, trembling, truly shaking at my performance of Crazy Train.
You had definitely big stage fright.
Big stage fright, taking a long time to get through, and lots of shows. But
yeah, we're at this music school, or this after school program in Miami called Live Modern School of Music, and we were placed in a band together and started doing classic rock covers. And then we all got along in the group, and then decided to do our own thing and start writing music together. And that was, I guess, the start of our musical relationship.
Yeah.
And, you know, one of the things that I've read from previous interviews is that when, you know, Mika started showing up with some of these song ideas, Matt, you were more of the music theory kind of guy, but she was coming in with ideas that had interesting time signatures and chord changes and, you know, key changes and things like that.
Yeah, it was crazy because my background was like progressive rock, and I guess I just like introduced these ideas to everyone, and then Mika really like, I don't know, like naturally integrated like all these complex musical ideas in such a natural way with her songwriting. It was very like, I don't know, it was cool to see.
That's really sweet. Yeah.
So the name of this band is Tabula Rasa, and you still have a few albums up on Bandcamp, and the juxtaposition is pretty crazy, right? I mean, it's just a completely different thing. But you did manage to find at least some fan base out there for this previous band.
A little bit.
Yeah, mostly like middle-aged men in Scandinavia.
Right.
But it's kind of funny seeing our fans like to bring up Tabula Rasa now.
Mhm.
Well, especially because our drummer from that band is still a really good friend of ours and has started touring with us for
Right.
Magdalena Bay. He's like an amazing drummer. So we just played the first leg of our tour with him. So yeah, now we've got him in the mix too. So Tabula Rasa does get mentioned.
Yeah.
Now.
Time to break out those Hendrix covers again, right?
Maybe not yet, but maybe at some point.
Anyway, there was some success there, and there was some live performance there, but it came time for college, and so Mika, you went to Philadelphia.
Mhm.
And Matt, you went to Boston, and that's kind of the end of the band for a while.
Yeah.
It's kind of hard to keep it going.
Yeah, it's hard to keep it going. And I also I don't think we had like that many fans or that many things going on, because it was like this type of, progressive rock that probably wasn't accessible at all. So yeah, I mean, the band kind of came to a natural conclusion-ish,
Mhm.
just by us being separated. And like a year went by, and the drummer wanted us all to like get back together again and work on music again. And we tried, but I think what really came out of that was me and Matt sort of saying, why don't we try to make something a little different? We could try this pop thing we've been hearing about, and
Which was kind of a joke, because it was just like so much of the opposite of what we were into musically, and so foreign to us as musicians. Well, especially for me. I think Mika was already starting to like explore.
yeah,
Yeah.
I think so.
So I'm just going to take a stab at this, if you don't mind. Because my understanding is, Mika, you had at that point kind of stopped writing for a time. And through this process, you started sending some demo ideas. But there have been different sort of thoughts that some of them came from interviews I read with you all. Some of them are just thoughts of mine. But these are some of the reasons I think you might have gotten back together as Magdalena Bay. First of all, you wanted to work together and stay connected as people, the two of you. That's one of mine. The second one is that rock would be harder to do long distance than something that was a little bit like that. Also, the artistic growth of collaborating in a genre that you had previously held in a fair amount of contempt.
Yes.
Correct.
And then the fact that this all did seem to come together when you sort of reconnected over winter break. My final thought is that maybe both of you were drunk. There was some, I believe there might have been some wine involved. Right?
I think we were during
you
the
are
conversation.
Totally correct, for sure. I think on all fronts.
On all
I have
fronts,
to say.
yeah. Across the board, correct. Yeah, you're good. And I think too, like I had just read an article about Julia Michaels and Justin Tranter, which kind of framed pop in an interesting way to me at that time, where I was like, oh, these people are like geniuses at their craft. And it's not that they're making like 20-minute progressive rock songs, they're crafting these like perfect pop songs. Like what an interesting way to think about that. And look at the like success they're having, I guess. And yeah, so that was another thing, I guess. But
but definitely all of the above.
Yeah,
for sure.
Our guest today on the bridge, Magdalena Bay. Mika and Matthew are joining us, and the new album, which is spectacular, Mercurial World, getting rave reviews all over the place. You went from being a prog rock band to renaming and refocusing and becoming this pop band. And I think, and just stop me if I'm wrong here, but pop just seems at a certain level to be simpler than what you were doing with the prog rock band. And you thought that pop might be a fairly easy thing to do, but with simplicity, it requires a precision that you were a little bit surprised it was as hard as it was.
It was really hard. Yeah, we like wrote what we thought sounded like a pop song, and wait, this is hard to make it good. And just like the precision and restraint, and also just like, I don't know. It's really hard.
I think it's easy if, you know, you have something to say and to like fit that all into a 20-minute song, you know, without any, you know, thought about how to make it a concise, you know, single
Focused.
Statement.
Yeah.
It's probably easier than trying to like do what you need to do all within 3 minutes, you know, and make it, I don't know, like entertaining, I guess, in a way.
Not danceable, but, you know,
Right.
like in some way that, you know, people can connect to. Like, that's the factor that's so hard to like capture. And I feel like we started learning about that as writers when we started to trying it out. Yeah,
it was just something we like learned along the way, you know, by trying to do it. We very quickly figured out like it's not as easy as we thought it would be.
Yeah.
Well, I think also over time you started to gain more respect for the genre too. You know, you came across some music from Chairlift and Charlie XCX, but the one that really sort of tripped your trigger was Grimes.
Right. Yeah. I think the Art Angels record was just so progressive in a way that really spoke to me as a, you know, former prog rock nerd, just in the production details and I don't know, the sounds of it. It was like obviously nothing like that what I would have heard on the radio, you know, on the pop station. So that kind of sort of opened up my perspective as to like what pop music could actually be.
Yeah, and I feel like it also brought like creative production to the forefront for us, whereas like in a rock band, like Matt was producing and he was doing an awesome job, but it was more of like producing around the band.
You record drums, guitar, bass, and vocals, and then you might add a few things here and there, but the core of the production is, you know, capturing the performance of the band. But with pop music, since there is no band to capture, you know, the possibilities become much more expansive, where drums don't have to be a drum kit, you know, it could be anything essentially. So there's I think a lot more room for creativity when it comes to pop music production, for sure.
You say you wanna go far away. I wanna know the place you crave. Is everything different or the same? I'm running out of my time. The flower gone dry. Lips touching my own do. Only what's left of my pride. I could lust for a lie. Weigh me words like you lose. And you say that you trust in me, and I say that I disagree. I'm out of my time, lost in the crowd. Your lips touching my own do. All that's left of my pride could fall for a lie. You weigh me words like you lose. You lose. You play, but there are no winners in the game. I wanna know the final stage, where you go when the curtain fades. I'm running out of my time, the flower gone dry, lips touching my own do. Only what's left of my pride could last for a lie. You weigh me words like you lose. And you say that you trust in me, and I say that I disagree. And you say that you trust in me, and I say that I disagree. I'm out of my time, lost in the crowd.
I mentioned this earlier, but sort of Matt sort of taking the theoretical approach and Mika more intuitive. How's the songwriting between the two of you? How does that work? I'm sure it's different songs.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it's kind of different for every track, right? But I guess speaking to what you're saying, like Mika might come to me with a demo that she would like make on piano.
Mhm.
And then I can go and then with some music theory knowledge, like mess around with some chords and stuff. So that's like one way that those two things can interact, but it's not always so like straightforward like that.
Yeah, like sometimes, Matt thinks of an idea and then I don't know, recently you just like made some chords and then I kind of produced them in a way to a beat by like chopping it up in a way that Matt was like, oh, that's weird, you put that there.
Right.
And I was like, yeah, I thought it sounded good. Yeah, I mean, I love music being like intuitive for me because I'm like an overthinker and overanalyzer, and it's like this beautiful space in my life where I just like kind of stop thinking and feel it out. So it's nice.
Our guest today on the bridge, Magdalena Bay, Mika and Matthew are joining us, and the new album, which is called Mercurial World, is really a special thing, and it was made in the space that you're talking to us from. This is Magdalena Bay Central.
Yep.
Yeah.
Headquarters. HQ.
You live, you work, it's all there. Pretty crazy. So we talked about the year that the pandemic gave you to make this album, but you also spent it building community.
Right. Yeah. I mean, with all this time and with like the lack of live performance, we needed to figure out a way to like connect with our audience, because that's something you usually do by seeing them in person. So we started, exploring things like live streaming and making TikTok videos and I mean a Discord server, which
a fan created.
Right, a fan created Discord server, but yeah, it was just a great way to like stay in touch with people.
Yeah.
The thing that really is crazy is when people go to that website, mercurialworld.com. This is actually a website that, and I know that you all collaborate on everything, but while Matt was over mixing and mastering the album, Mika, you were doing a lot with that website, and it does look like we got in a time machine and went back 20 years.
Yeah, I think like the pandemic, first year of pandemic also gave us the time to just like chill and watch movies and find weird like YouTube videos and internet click holes that kind of somehow led us to these old websites that I was fascinated by, like these forgotten websites.
Yeah, I think we found like a subreddit called Forgotten Websites or something.
We spent like a week just going through as many as possible, and we're so like amazed by the genre or like the aesthetic and like the nostalgia, but also like the obsoleteness of it all. Yeah,
I feel like there was like a point, in when the internet first came around where artists were excited by the idea of like the web page as a medium, for art.
Yeah, and everything has gotten so corporatized now. And it's not really about that, there's blogs, but I don't know, it's different. Like you would just make a website for your dog or for your project or for your vacation photos. Like it's so different from how it is now. So yeah.
I'm just guessing that it's a lot harder to make a website that looks like the year 2000 in 2022 than it was in 2000, right? I mean,
I think it's probably easier to be honest. Yeah. We used Wix, which is
you
funny.
could do a lot on Wix.
Like wow, you guys like what it like coded this in HTML or whatever. I was like, no, it's just on Wix. Some like creative placement of things, but we had a lot of fun making it.
It was a blast to make it.
You've also made a lot of your own videos, and I think that the important thing, the most important thing for the sake of conversation, is to acknowledge that when it comes to making videos, you all had nothing to work with. You had nothing to work with, right? And you chose to embrace those limitations.
Yeah.
I think we tried to make a professional video on no budget, and then we realized this is just, it's looking like a failure of an attempt to make a professional video,
right?
And so we decided to have, I guess, more fun with it. And if you make something look intentionally low budget, then it comes out as an art piece, so much more successful than when you like go for something, I guess, clean looking, if that makes sense.
Yeah, it lets you just, we had to like make up for it with like personality and like
humor.
Yeah, and just like a lot of like fast like a lot happening,
Editing
if that
tricks.
makes sense. Like
yeah, Mika got very good at like learning how to use Final Cut.
like throwing a bunch of stuff in there to keep people entertained, because the footage probably didn't look that good, so maybe with like a lot of PNG images and cheesy effects, we
weren't going for like cinematic
right
visuals, just more like
fun.
Fun.
Well, the speed of the visuals is pretty great too. I mean, these things really move. But you mentioned personality, and like for a lot of your online presence and the videos, you're not really being yourself. You're kind of being your cartoon selves. Is that fair?
In a way, yeah. I mean, it's always an interesting sort of thing. It's like some artists kind of stick to a persona, you know,
like a character, like a Ziggy Stardust or something,
right? And I guess in our videos we have characters, and we also bring in other characters that maybe like we're acting out or not. And like on our TikToks we do characters, but I think we're also just ourselves, like on our live stream. And
we're not trying to like transform into some persona or anything, but I think it's fun to like play up a character in a video, you know, or a sketch.
So you're not Father John Misty. You come out of it every once in a while.
Oh yeah, I don't know much about him.
I don't know much about him either, but right. I guess not.
We like to, when we communicate with fans and stuff, we want to be just ourselves.
Ourselves. Yeah,
it would probably be very exhausting if we had to like maintain some sort of persona.
I do think there's an interesting dichotomy though, where you are so sincere and hardworking, and there's an authenticity in the effort and in the lyrics, but then you present it all in such a playful manner.
I think we just like having fun at the end of the day, so
it's like a mix, like we take the music like super seriously, and like put our like lives into it, but we also appreciate I guess having fun.
I think there's room for both. I feel like maybe people have this vision of like the brooding artist, the serious artist who like sits in their cave and tortures themselves to make a record, and then it's like a work of genius, and then it's like totally tied to this image of the artist, but that's not never the reality, I mean, and maybe in some rare cases, but I feel like it's maybe this like damaging stereotype or something that in order to be a serious musician, you have to be like in suffering or something like that.
That makes more like authentic, but it's probably not.
I don't think so.
One of the things that the pandemic took away from us is, at least a couple of years worth of live shows. And I can't wait to see you all live. I'm kind of guessing that the live show has got the same kind of creativity applied to it that some of your other work does.
We try to keep it a little conceptual, just because we feel like that's more interesting than just like songs. So we incorporate like a character, and we make it a little bit more of a theatrical production as much as we can.
And like our visuals are such a big part of what we do, so we like to have a projector behind us with videos that we've made. So I mean, we get really excited thinking about like the future of our live show, and it feels like we're just getting started, but it's in a fun spot right now.
Magdalena Bay is our guest today on the bridge. Mika Tenenbaum and Matthew Lewin. We really appreciate the time, and want to steer everybody to the album Mercurial World, but also that website, mercurialworld.com. If you visit that, I think you're going to have a real world example of what we've been talking about. Just been a joy to talk to you all. Thanks for your creativity. Thanks for your time. Really appreciate it.
Thank you so much.
Thanks for having us.
Our pleasure.
Magdalena Bay today on the bridge.